So what do you know? Let's kick this show off this morning. Merry Christmas, everybody, as well, and a Happy New Year if we don't speak to you before then. So thanks for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it in the biggest of ways. So let's kick it off with teams who literally have nothing to play for, and we'll talk about those that, well, do, and to be thankful for being in the playoffs. Of course, thankful for being who you are, thankful for being in the playoffs, and those that aren't thankful are just a bunch of Scrooges. So we'll not talk about the Scrooges. If you're good with that, I'm good with it. So let's talk about the NFL playoffs and positioning. Let's start off with the have-nots. And the have-nots are the Cowboys. Very disappointing year, very disappointing season for a variety of reasons. And perhaps I think the biggest offseason kiltered move was by Jerry Jones getting rid of Micah Parsons in a trade that, well, I guess you can look back at it if you're Jerry Jones or if you're any of the Joneses. Of course, you can be the Joneses if you want to. By making this trade so early when they could have waited to the offseason to do it. Do you think it was a great move for the Cowboys to depart with Micah Parsons, sending him over to Green Bay so early in the season?
No, absolutely not. I definitely think Jerry Jones had plenty of time to work something out with Micah Parsons. The situation got contentious. You didn't even get his name right. This dragged out for a while. Micah Parsons did not want to leave Dallas as well, which is a big component to this, because if you have a player that really wants to stay where he's at, you have to do everything you can to make that player happy. And Jerry Jones did what he does best. He found a way to take a situation and make it worse and worse and worse as time went on. He goes over to Green Bay, and Dallas kind of went down the ship right there, because other players see that, and other players see the treatment that you're giving somebody else who's a star player, well-loved. And when they see that, they kind of fall suit to that. Like, okay, this is really not about love here. It's really just about me doing my job. And at the end of the day, it comes across like you don't care. So Jerry Jones blew that situation up, and there you have it. They're out of the playoffs.
Well, I don't think that he was the only reason necessarily. I think the defense has a lot to do with why this team lost to begin with. I don't necessarily mean the linebackers up front or those sack masters, those are would-be tacklers like Kenny Smith, who came over in that trade for Micah Parsons. And the sad part is that Micah Parsons was traded for a bag of peanuts and a Coke. And what he ended up getting was what? Injured, torn ACL. He's out for the season. He's done and over with as far as this season in Green Bay, and will be a sideline guy with a team that's trying to right the ship without him, who actually were doing it before they ever acquired him. So the Packers are certainly a team to look out for. I know Jordan Love had taken a nasty, nasty hit after being sacked, and clearly an injury that nobody wants to face, and that was roughing the passer, so that was an additional yardage. But you know who stepped in really, really well was Willis. Willis is a guy who was drafted just a couple of years ago by Tennessee, who had a lot of great promises, a promising future moving forward, but somehow, because of how bad the Titans organization was, they didn't have the coaching staff. There was just a variety of issues and problems that this Titans team were actually facing. They ultimately fired their head coach, so now an interim head coach taken over. Their season is done. Cam Ward is looking better and better with the few remaining games on the actual slate, and, well, games that really don't mean anything for anybody. But what it does is that gives him more NFL experience. So hats off to Cam Ward and what the Tennessee Titans are doing. But when you're talking about Jerry Jones being Jerry, it's an ongoing situation. He openly admitted that he failed and his management team failed in regards to getting this right. And I think that's probably the most truth I've ever heard from Jerry Jones, to be perfectly honest with you. When I covered the Cowboys training camp, it was in Ventura, California, it was as if Jerry could do no wrong. It was if he didn't really want to play the blame game, because that's not Jerry's style. What he did was he deferred. He deferred certain answers. Well, we're going to have to look at this. Well, who's we? Him and his son? Him and his two sons? Him and coaches and management and position coaches? They're all going to have to go back to the drawing board to see what they can do to beef up that defense, not only up front, but in the secondary as well, where they were torched. They couldn't stop the run as well, and these games are basically meaningless. So I would have waited till the offseason in order to make Micah Parsons, a trade component, to actually be able to have that conversation, to be able to say, hey, look, Micah, let's do more for you. Let's do more with you. Let's see what that actually looks like moving forward. But unfortunately, this team has zero chance of making any postseason play. And to be honest with you, when you're Matt Eberflus, and he did this when he was in Chicago, he did not disguise blitz packages. He's a defensive guy, granted, but he didn't show anything exotic. There wasn't anything that helped me understand his mindset. And so I believe that he was a co-conspirator to how the Cowboys failed themselves by not being able to get into postseason because of the lack of defensive effort, not only in secondary, but up front. I don't think Matt Eberflus is the guy for the Dallas Cowboys. I really don't. I didn't see that throughout the regular season, and I don't see that now. When you look in the 2026, moving forward on the other side of the ball, when you look at this game against the Commanders, you think to yourself, well, Dan Quinn has dealt with a lot more, but dealing with trying to replace those, guys who are injured. The guys that are up in age, the average age of that team in totality is almost 29 years old. You got to get younger frequently and often. And unfortunately, this is an aging team that needs to get new players, younger players, trade some guys, keep the high productive guys. And the youngest guy on your team is Jaden Daniels, and he's a starting quarterback. So when you look at this team and the patchwork they've done and the injuries that they faced between Terry McLaurin, who's up there, is just now getting back into some type of stride, it's kind of a little too late, to be honest with you. And I don't think that, obviously neither team has anything to play for here. But I think when you look at this game overall, this is a stat padding game for both teams. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it definitely is. It's really unfortunate that two teams that have a lot of talent are way not even close to making the playoffs. And that's how quickly things change in the NFL. The Commanders, they were right there last year. This year they're dealing with some injuries and they was able to battle back, but they definitely underachieved. I would say the Cowboys probably even worse just because of the payroll and the team that they are. But the Commanders really didn't help themselves out. A team that I thought was going to be real close to making it a chance to make it back to the Super Bowl. I mean, making it back to where they were last year and get into the Super Bowl, and they just underachieved. And it's unfortunate. It just goes to show you how fast things change here in the NFL. And I agree with you. You do have to have some vets, but you always have to keep your eye out for new, fresh talent because you never know. Guys get older, they don't get younger. You got to keep those options open.
You absolutely do. There's no doubt about that one. We're live here at Diamonds Casino in Reno, Nevada. Go to diamondscasinoreno.com and sign up. Be a guest. If you're in town, stop by and say hello. I am here. I think more importantly, we had a snowstorm that came in here last night, disrupted a lot of services, including my television. So I was not able to watch TV after I got done with work, which I was very disappointed about. However, there's always a cell phone because we know those are stronger signals than any cable television there is out there. So speaking of what's stronger and what's not, I think what you can look at in the Detroit Lions season was promising. It was promising from the entry point, promising from a team in Jamar Gibbs and Montgomery, able to be this dual back set that looks so good behind the line of scrimmage, yet found ways to fumble the ball. Then that game against Pittsburgh at home didn't look very good. And you stapled away basically the ability for you to go back to your identity, and that's run the ball. But they chose to pass the ball instead. It doesn't make sense. Reminds me of Seattle going up against New England in a Super Bowl a few years back, where they're used to running the ball. Then all of a sudden they get into the red zone. Oh, wait, what are we doing? Let's just pass the ball instead. No. Marshawn Lynch obviously upset. That was a coaching tomfoolery right there in Seattle. But when you look at the Detroit Lions and you think of a promising season basically went down the tubes because of the lack of defense and what that looks like for them. I think the ending to that Steelers game was not what Detroit wanted because that would have kept their season afloat. On the other side of that coin, you look at the sideline antics of DK Metcalf. Ultimately, I don't know if he hit the fan or if he pulled the fan's fake hair, or I'm not sure exactly what happened there. All I know is that he received a fine that was ultimately upheld by the NFLPA. He's forfeiting $500,000. That's a lot of bread, a lot of money that you're just going to blow off and say, well, no big deal. It's just $500,000. Do you have $500,000? I don't have $500,000, but you're just peeing that in the wind essentially. So when you look at what the Steelers are going to have to do upcoming against the Browns, they have to change some things. Now, the Browns are a very horrible football team. Make no mistake about that. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But the Steelers decided to what? Win the game. And how did they win the game? They had more rushing yards they had in that game than they had all season long. Am I a believer in Pittsburgh and them going deep into the playoffs? I'm going to have to see a lot more because right now I don't see enough. I just don't. But when you look at what Aaron Rodgers had done, who will not have DK Metcalf, who by the way provided well over 67 receptions, 114 targets, and a strong average of 14.4 yards per carry, is good. It's serviceable. Mike Tomlin went on to post game presser by stating, "Well, it's the next opportunity for somebody else to come up to actually fill those shoes." But they don't have a lot of people, so they're going to have to use a variety of players in order to make up that kind of difference. And to be honest with you, the way their scheme has been running, I think they will. When I look at this game against the Minnesota Vikings, we'll talk about the Steelers more in just a minute. But when you look at this Minnesota games, look, this is a lackluster season for Minnesota. I mean, it was an absolute failure. And I say that in all three phases. Let's go back to the Lions. When you look at this Lions team, did they fail themselves by not staying true to their game plan moving into head-to-head against Pittsburgh at Ford Field?
Yeah, they definitely did drop the ball on that. The thing about it is, when you're the Lions that have that much talent and you're a team that people know around the league is well respected, you have to always bring your A game. And I feel like they definitely missed an opportunity, the Lions, to not be in this position right here. They're not technically out of it, but they really put themselves in a behind the eight ball to get themselves in the playoffs where they should be. They have too much talent again on their team, even more so with the Lions and the Commanders. And they really should be there. On DK Metcalf, as you brought that up, I definitely a big, huge mistake on DK Metcalf. Yes, in the NFL, you're going to get fans that bait you. You're going to get fans that do things that are upsetting, but you have to make sure that you go ahead and control yourself and keep yourself. You got to make sure that is it worth it? Losing over $500,000, losing not only that, but he also has a $45 million guarantee that they're blocking, and you lost 2 games. I'm not surprised the league came down strong on this because they have to set a precedent. You walked over to the fan. You know what I'm saying? You had time to think about it. Maybe you could have said something and not put your hands on them. You know what I'm saying? And I agree with the fan. The fan, I don't think did call him a racial slur. After hearing the fan, I think he called him by his full name is what he said. Said a DK called it by his full name and got underneath DK Metcalf's skin. He walked over and did what he did. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. At the end of the day, a fail on DK Metcalf, that's not a way that you're going to help out your team going into the end of the season. I know he'll be back if everything works out well for the Steelers for the playoffs, but huge, huge loss for DK. And be that guy that when he first came into the league, I'll say this one last thing. He was a guy, Rudy, that really, truly appreciated the opportunity. He was crying because of it. Be that same guy, and everything will work itself out.
No, absolutely. I could not agree with you more. I look at DK Metcalf and I think to myself, you know what? He was good in Seattle, but he didn't have the type of pass support. He didn't have the quarterback. It wasn't, it was a quarterback by committee in Seattle for just a minute or so. And I think the sad part about that is that he watched his talents just go down the toilet there in Seattle and now has the opportunity with a huge signing bonus to be able to come back and say, you know what? I'm the guy. I want to be that guy. But he wasn't the guy on that day. He just was not. And that's the saddest part of all, is that he didn't have the capability. And Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I just think that he could have had better control. He could have had better, I could say, a better type of attitude in regards to what he was facing and the situation that he deals with. You're going to get heckled everywhere you go. It doesn't matter if you're a football player or not. That's going to happen. That's just the way it is, sadly and unfortunately. But you can't let a fan, get under your skin. Come on. You have to be bigger and better than that. So to move forward, the Steelers are going to have to do something a lot different, get a lot more playmakers in early and often. And if they think, and if I believe in them, that is something that they can do. I believe they can certainly make that happen. The question is whether or not they have that type of personnel. That I don't know. That remains to be seen. So let's go back to the Vikings. Their season was, resonated with injuries. J.D. McCarthy will not be playing with a now injured hand after being sacked hard by the New York Giants last week, despite winning 16-13. This Viking team needs some serious help. And when I say serious, I mean serious. They need playmakers on both sides of the ball, a wide receiver who will complement Jefferson on the opposite side, and perhaps a pass rusher or two up front to stop that run in order to close those gaps so runners don't run free like they did all over them for a good majority of the season. Yeah, you have Metellus, and that's great, but Metellus himself just can't do it. Just can't do it alone. What else do the Minnesota Vikings have to do in order to, should they draft another quarterback on top of J.J. McCarthy? What should the Vikings do in the upcoming draft that's being held in Pittsburgh?
They definitely need some help on the defensive end. They need to draft somebody who is a very good rusher, somebody that can help put some pressure on the quarterback. If you can't get that, get a cornerback or get a cornerback or safety. Somebody's going to help you on the defensive end. I think the Vikings, they love offense and they're too offensive minded to a point where it hurts them. They got great offense. You need to stop. In the NFL, they'll say it once and say it again. Defense, defense, defense. You got to work on your defense. You got to shore that up. One way to do it is get some pressure on the quarterback, or you get somebody who's really good at pass breakups and or interceptions. Not somebody who could just make tackles back there. You need somebody who can, pass defend, pass breakup, make a quarterback think about throwing that ball to that receiver, or make them nervous about throwing that ball, and then you can get a pick. But they definitely need help on the defensive end of the ball. I think if they could do that, they'll be fine.
I do as well. One thing I know about the Vikings and one thing I know about, head coaches is that defense will win championships, but you still have to have a well-balanced offense and defense. In other words, in order to get into postseason, your offense has to perform in the way that they need to. Offensive line is aging. They're getting up there. They need to get some younger talent and or go through free agency and grab some guys in the offseason and say, you know what? You played X amount of years. Let's look at your production. Let's get really analytical when you're talking about the Minnesota Vikings on the defensive line and the offensive line in order to get the right people in the right positions to do what? Protect you, give you time in the pocket. If you're scrambling and you recognize that there's pass coverage that's okay, you're going to pick on the shortest straw, and that could be a cornerback that's relatively new, a rookie. Be opportunistic. I don't know if the Vikings were overly opportunistic throughout this season, but if they can do that in the upcoming season, I think they'll have a lot more than what they bargained for in all three phases. But it's just a question of whether or not leadership, ownership wants to find a way to get these guys, involved early and often to be a impenetrable force, especially in a very, very tough division in the NFC North. So we're going to have to find out what that looks like. We're not only brought to you by Diamonds Casino, but I happen to work here at the casino as well. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Go to diamondscasinoreno.com. Schedule your visit. We got Tahoe up here. There's snow up here. We have a hotel adjacent to this casino. Book a room. There's always opportunities to have fun. We have 2,800 square foot of nothing but games and good times and people winning jackpots. So it is a winner's court. So make sure if you're in the area or maybe your travel destination to go to Tahoe, do some snow. We just got a storm last night, so there's plenty of snow up in Tahoe. I can assure you of that. Speaking of tumbles and losses.
So there's snow right now where you're at?
There's snow right now where I'm at.
Wow. So white Christmas then. There you go. Yeah. It may not be snow right now, but you got snow on the ground. That's great.
It was snowing last night while I was in the middle of calling bingo for everybody, for all the locals. So I had a white Christmas. So that for me was enough. That was plenty. I've never had a white Christmas before. A guy from California. Go figure. Let's move on here. Let's talk about the topsy-turvy loss by the Denver Broncos, which to me was very surprising because they're one of the toughest places to play at Mile High. It is. You're at 5,280 degrees height in elevation, and you're thinking to yourself, do I need oxygen? I don't know. I think the Denver Broncos needed a lot of oxygen myself. Why? Because they were exposed. They were exposed in the secondary early and often by Trevor Lawrence, who picked them apart, pass by pass, moment by moment. And when you fly into 5280, that's not easy elevation to play in. It's just not. And then you add to that the stadium that you're playing in. The home crowd's brutal. I know. I lived in Denver, Colorado. That's the only reason why I know this. So when Jaguars, a fair weather team, by the way, do much better on the road than Miami Dolphins, and that's probably one of the reasons. And of course, a quarterback that knows how to not throw interceptions. In Trevor Lawrence, uh, led in the first. They added three more to the before the half, and then there was more scoring in the third. This Jaguars team is on a 6-game win streak. I don't know if anybody knew that or not, but they're really playing hot right now. Trevor Lawrence is a guy, in my opinion, and I called this out when I seen it. He received an insurmountable contract, which at first, at least initially, Alan, I was really taken back by. And I said, he hasn't shown anything yet. Why would you give him an extension? Why would you give him a huge contract? Are you kidding me? So now here he is in a situation where he's actually earning the money that his contract dictated. So is Trevor Lawrence the quarterback that the Jaguars have needed, have looked for, have paid handsomely for this season?
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, shout out to him. He's doing big things and he's playing extremely well. And the thing about Trevor Lawrence, he is improving. I definitely do think with his game, and this is all without Travis Hunter too. One of their big weapons. So,
Yeah.
he's coming into form. I definitely think him and Liam Cohn have kind of got some of the ruffles out of. They ironed that out in the beginning, and I think now he's looking at it as, hey, Liam Cohn could help me. He could help my game out. He can help me get better. I think the mutual respect has kind of set in. And I think Trevor Lawrence is actually playing really, really well. And for a guy who has gotten some really good licks on him, like hits, he's taken some good hits. For him to get back up and keep playing and to beat a team like Denver at their place, one of the hottest teams in the league right now, if not the hottest team in the AFC, that's outstanding. So, yes, I definitely think he's earned his money, and I think he's going to only get better and better if he stays healthy, number one, and just keep adding more weapons like Travis Hunter and keep the offense doing great. Keep a good running back there. I think the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, ETN certainly a guy on the rise, and he complements the offense so well because he finds those gaps, he finds those areas, and he knows how to accept passes, not just running behind the line of scrimmage. So he's the utilitarian kind of guy, the one who kind of does it all, right? He's got the he's playing the banjo and he's playing the trumpet and the bagpipe, all at the same time. So he's a utilitarian kind of guy. Back to Trevor Lawrence. I think as though ownership decided to say, you know what, we're going to take a chance on this guy. Now, coming out of the NCAA as a very top draft pick, thought to myself, okay, well, he should fit relatively well, and not so much in the first year. He kind of failed, to be perfectly honest with you. Second year, kind of some of the same. But this year is a little different. Actually, it's very different. What am I saying? I'm not going to understate the obvious here. He's been doing more with what he has, and he's been doing more with less, with his legs, with his accuracy, with his timing, being able to get out of the pocket, scrambling for first downs, doing all the nuanceful things that that he needs to do, that he must do. So what really kind of sets him apart, and it sets the team apart overall from others, is the Jags have beaten the Broncos we just talked about, took care of the lowly Jets, squashed the Colts, decimated the Titans with a big fat score, but pull off a squeaker against the Cardinals. That also has me a little bit kind of questionable in regards to what that looks like, but then handed the Chargers a devastating loss by double digits. So I think when you look at the Jaguars in total, they look good. Do they look great? At times. Earlier in the season, they didn't have a whole lot of pass rush. It was relatively inconsistent. Offense looked okay at best. Somehow, when your team striving to get into postseason play, what do? You tighten the belt, you stay in the study room, you execute what's being given to you, you do it on the practice field, and you get it done. I know Allen Iverson said, man, it's just practice. It's just practice. Well, this ain't just practice. This is taking the practice, what you preach, and execution on the field. That's what it's about, and that's what they've been doing. So kudos to the Jaguars. I guess Khan got what he needed, and he didn't get conned after all by giving Trevor Lawrence that big fat contract. Um, there are other games going on this weekend, as you know. There are games already in progress right now. They're shaping to be relatively formidable and quite possibly AFC positioning type of games. So the Houston Texans are traveling to SoFi to take on the LA Chargers. The Ravens visit the frozen tundra. It's probably frozen now. I'm sure it snowed in Green Bay. I can almost guarantee it, especially this time of year at Lambeau Field. And the Seahawks are traveling to Carolina on the road to play the Panthers, who just won, by the way, with an INT to seal that game. So that was quite interesting of a game, to say the least. And the Panthers with Bryce Young, I'd be honest with you, could be comeback player of the year for Bryce Young? Quite possibly. I mean, he was benched earlier in the season last year, and he's just come back and became this juggernaut of a guy. What do you see from Bryce Young? What do you like about him?
I love what I saw with Bryce Young. Shout out to Assist Sports. I was able to call the game against the Panthers and the Bucks, and Bryce Young looked wonderful. I mean, he made the plays. He didn't force anything. He made the throws when the guys were open. He looked outstanding. In fact, my son even said, "Hey, you need to not be so excited when the Carolina makes a play because my team is the Bucks."
I would have never guessed if you look at Allen's Facebook and Instagram pages.
And shout out to the Carolina fans. They did chime in a lot during that game. So you had a lot of feedback. But yes, it was awesome to see Bryce Young, like you mentioned, got benched early this year, come back later and learn from that experience and play much better. He was a guy that was, not going to throw the ball to just throw it to kind of make something out of nothing. He threw the ball with purpose, and he threw to receivers when they opened, made very, very good decisions. He outplayed Baker Mayfield. That was just the point blank. That's what he did. And the Carolina Panthers got the win deservingly. They played better than the Bucks, and it showed. Even watching the game and calling the game, I would have been more surprised if the Bucks won it the way it was going, Rudy, because it seemed like the Carolina Panthers were a step ahead of the Bucks throughout the whole game. Mm-hmm. And if the Bucks, they did have a chance to steal it at the end, and they could have stolen it at the end, but they didn't steal it at the end. The better team that day did win, the Panthers, and I definitely do think the great thing about the Bucks, even with that loss, they still hold a chance. They win the next two games. They still can make it to the playoffs. They hold their own destiny. But the Panthers and Bryce Young is doing phenomenal.
Yeah, they're one of those sleeper teams. I didn't think they were going to be where they're at right now. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I knew Bryce Young was certainly on the rise, and I could see him kind of taking control of this team. He was really focused and honed in on execution, making sure he didn't turn the ball over. Very cautious and careful with that football, being able to make those throws downfield, as well as the intermediary passes, those quick slants to tight ends and wide receivers. He certainly has the decision-making processes. Now it's just a matter of it's only up from here for Bryce Young, to be perfectly honest with you. So I like where he's going. I like where he's trending. He's a very likable young man, and I really foresee bigger things coming for him in a Carolina Panthers uniform next season. But we're not going to talk about next season because they're still a part of this season, and they're still trying to make a playoff run, which they hadn't done in well over 10 years. So kudos to the Carolina Panthers. And I usually don't talk about the Carolina Panthers a whole lot on my show. Why? Because they've been relatively, insignificant, sadly, but it's true. The other game that's kind of interesting, Steelers can wrap up the AFC North by traveling to Cleveland to play the Browns, a very formidable foe with an injured Shedeur Sanders, right pinky, still injured, a guy who I would say at best a fifth-round pick, which is exactly where he needed to be picked. Sorry, Dion, but it is what it is. When I look at this Browns team, not a lot to look forward to. They go through quarterbacks like, horses on a carousel. And then add bonus to this, they're keeping Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, you're right. And that's the Browns in a nutshell. I definitely that's the Browns in a nutshell. I knew that the Browns Shador Sanders, I called it at the beginning of the season that he was going to get a chance to play at some point during the season.
Sure.
And shame on the Browns because they should have prepared the man better. I think they were hating on him even though they drafted him. I've never seen anything like that. It to me it was clear that the Browns had an agenda for Shador Sanders. Let me call for what it is, meaning you did not put this kid in the best position to be successful. And that's fine, but then don't draft him. If you don't want somebody to be successful and you just want to state a message to maybe his dad or something, once you drafted him, you have to invest in it. That's what it comes with it. You have to prepare him to get better. And shout out to Shador Sanders. He's doing great for a guy who really got no reps. He just thrown out there and just playing ball. And
but that's what the Browns do. Historically, that's what they do. That's why they've gone through so many quarterbacks. They've went through more quarterbacks than any other team in NFL history. So what does that tell you about him? What does that tell you about the organization? It's a dumpster fire over there. It'll continue to be a dumpster fire over there, regardless of who they get as their head coach, whether it's who they have now or somebody else in the future. Why? Because ownership is horrific in Cleveland. It's already been established, and we know this. So when we go back into the AFC and we talk about the Colts, who are on a very thin and fine line against the Jaguars, we just spoke about them. But they go to Indianapolis to play the Colts. I don't like the Colts. I don't like this matchup. I do not like this matchup. Not a betting guy, but I don't like the matchup. Why? Because the Jaguars are on fire and the Colts can barely scratch two stones to make the fire, despite having Phillip Rivers, who, by the way, who has walked into and better and better. When you look at the Colts, do you think they keep this fairy tale going for Phillip Rivers and keep him into next year as a backup to Daniel Jones?
I say definitely. He's been playing great football. It hasn't been his fault to me why they're losing games at this point, the last couple of games. You know what? He knows the system. He's playing well. He's having fun. You could have went with other quarterbacks that weren't as good, as competent as him. You know what? I definitely do think you keep this fairy tale going. I think Phillip Rivers would be more than willing to be the backup if they get somebody else in there that could do better. The guy loves football. You could see it. And you know what? I think he's doing great. You know, for his age, it's hard for you to gunsling and beat the 49ers. Let's just call for what it is. They're not a middle of the road team. They're a very experienced team. They have a lot of weapons. Even when he was doing great in the beginning of the game, I said, this is probably not going to last the whole game. And it didn't.
No, it didn't. Even though they looked good in the third quarter. They looked
great. I mean, he made some unbelievable throws. You don't look at his age or something. And for a moment, you just look at the play. He made some phenomenal throws. Yep. He made them right on task, right on point. Some guys who are in the league don't even do that. They throw it too late, or they throw it too high, or
yes.
But at the end of the day, it just Brock Purdy started to get hot, and you knew that where this was going. It's the 49ers. Brock started to get hot. You knew where this was going. But hey, they didn't lose because of Phillip Rivers. I love this fairy tale. I love what he's doing. And yes, they got the right man for the job. Kudos to the Colts for getting Phillip Rivers. I know it's a risky move league-wide. People seeing you getting a guy that's 44 years young. But hey, you can't hate on it. I'm happy for Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, absolutely right. Speaking of your Buccaneers, they're traveling to Miami in a short skid to play the hapless Miami Dolphins. And what's sad about this is that the Dolphins looked relatively promising in the middle of the season and then fell off. And all the wheels fell off. I'm not talking about just the two wheels. I'm talking about all four wheels fell off. Tua was benched. And now you put in your rookie QB. It didn't go over very well either, but he's a rookie, so that's what you kind of expect from that, right? He has to understand the NFL speed. The only way to understand it is by what? Playing in it, playing on the field to be able to get those reps, which are extremely important and critical for this team moving forward. Will Tua be there next year? That remains to be seen. I'm going to err on the side of no, I wouldn't want him. Trade him off because he's no longer a starter in the National Football League. He'll be a backup, a relatively good backup, just like we had seen throughout NFL history. Good quarterbacks end up being backup quarterbacks because of age or because of play or because of a variety of those things. So when you fly to Miami, I'm sure it's a short trip. What, maybe 40 minutes, if that, 30 minutes, give or take. And when I look at this Bucks team who are extremely desperate, they have a 6% chance. 6%. That's nothing to get them into postseason. But it's everything, especially you're playing the hapless Miami Dolphins. When you look at this game overall, do you think the Buccaneers have an opportunity? Does Baker Mayfield right this ship despite what happened last week and destroy Miami and put them out of their misery for the season?
I definitely praying and hoping they do, because this is really
Pray and hope, pray and hope.
this is the Bucks' opportunity. You know, you want to be in this situation as an NFL team where if you win the last two games, you make it to the playoffs. If you lose one of these games, then you're in a situation where you got to hope another team loses. You got to hope one wins. You don't want to be in that situation. You control your destiny. You win the last two games of the season, as poorly as you played recently over the last, I'll say 6-7 weeks. You still have a chance to go ahead and win and make it to the playoffs just by winning the last two games against the Dolphins and the Panthers. As we talked about earlier about Bryce Young, it's hard to beat a team two times in the NFL, especially a team that you've just played. And you definitely should beat the Dolphins the way they're in right now. But the Bucks need to understand these two games are not going to be given to you. You have to play your best football these last two games. If you do that, I think the Bucks win it and they make it to the playoffs. And you got to beat the Dolphins. You have to beat the Dolphins.
Yeah, there's no way around it. I think when you look at what Baker has done and as consistent as he has been, he's thrown some picks, here and there, and it hasn't always been pretty upfront. The line has done a decent job protecting him. They could do a much better job protecting him for all four quarters and not just 3 1/3 or 2 1/3 or 2 3/4. This has to be consistently done, and that's one of the problems, and that's one of the reasons why he was injured with a torn labrum, or at least a fractured shoulder. So look, bottom line is that whatever injury you get, your offensive line is designed and paid good money to protect you, and if you don't protect your QB, you're not going to win the game. Guaranteed, because that leads to tackles for losses, that leads to sacks, that leads to PBUs, that leads to disaster. And unfortunately for the Buccaneers, this is a game that's a must win, but they need a lot of help to get into postseason play. A lot of help. And when I say that, I mean that when you look at the Patriots on the other side of that coin in the AFC East, they have to win over the Jets. Somehow the Bills have to lose, which they have done, and maybe they'll fall from grace. I don't know. And you have to wish and hope and pray that Denver slips up within the last 2 weeks of play in the regular season. That could clinch the AFC East. But right now, the New England Patriots, with May, with the way that coaching has performed in a variety of levels, maybe Coach of the Year, perhaps. A future Hall of Famer go, but sometimes organizations are just dumpster fires, and that's just what they do. So either way, the Pats have punched their ticket into postseason. What have you seen from Drake May that makes you maybe a believer in him as a possible MVP vote this season?
Yes, he's been playing great. Drake May, I mean, making plays, balling out, doing things the Patriots way, getting wins, and they've been playing great as a team. He's got solid running back players back there. And what has happened is that team is really turned around a lot. Shout out to my Sam Scola, the musician, and he's really a big Patriots fan. He loves what they're doing. I love seeing what they're doing too. Drake May definitely is a very, very good MVP candidate. Baker Mayfield was in there at the beginning of the season. He's not there anymore.
No.
He fell down a slippery slope and started throwing picks, and it went downhill. But I think Drake May brings up a very, very hard case for him not to get the MVP. But I definitely do think the Patriots are doing fantastic, and I definitely do think they're going to beat the Jets too.
Destiny in their hands, and we're talking about the Chicago Bears, the 11-4. Yes, right, the 11-4 Chicago Bears, traveling from the Windy City to Northern California. Could be a time frame differential issue. I don't know. But they're playing the San Francisco 49ers, who also are, well, 11-4. So when they're reeling from this Caleb Williams-led overtime win at Soldier Field against the Packers, you think to yourself, man, did Caleb Williams really have it in him to do it? I think he did. But again, it starts up front. If it wasn't for the offensive line, he would have never had that opportunity to get that ball downfield exactly where he needed to put it, exactly when it needed to be thrown. And the anticipation that he plays with is by far just absolutely fabulous. One of those things where I didn't see that coming, obviously in a first year or even a second year. Sometimes quarterbacks just don't get it. But Caleb Williams led an overtime win against the Green Bay Packers, and it's the same game that Jordan Love obviously went down with that concussion. I don't know if he's cleared protocol or yet. I would like to think that he did, and it's not a long-term injury for him. But when you look at the Chicago Bears team, 11-4, yeah, you could talk about the 85 Bears, and even the 85 Bears weren't 11-4. Let's just put that into the bed and put it to sleep, because both of these teams are having great seasons. Now, one has faced more adversity than the other, obviously, with all the injuries and George Kittle going down, and now he has an opportunity to play. He played, then he was kind of hurt, maybe favoring the hip a little bit. Did the Chicago Bears go into Santa Clara and beat the 49ers?
That is going to be a tough matchup, but I will give Caleb, his flowers. He's doing great. I mean, for him to go up there and beat the Green Bay Packers against Jordan Love, and he's playing sensational. I mean, he's making good decisions. He's not trying to do too much. I know he had a rocky first season. Sometimes these guys, when they get a lot of opportunities, they kind of let the head gets a little big. I think that was fallen victim to Caleb Williams, but he put that to the wayside. He's doing outstanding for his second year, has him in the playoffs, and that's saying a lot for the Bears. That is saying a whole lot. His scrambling ability, he's making great decisions, and props to him. And I definitely, to him to go to the 49ers up there in San Francisco and win, I don't see it. I definitely do think the 49ers still have the edge and will win the game, but I definitely do think he's going to make it a game, and he can't take it for granted. I don't think the 49ers are going to take it for granted. But at the end of the day, the 49ers are just too strong with too many weapons. Christian McCaffrey, Brock Purdy's hot. I see them beating the Bears.
I'm going to have to disagree with you, and here's why. The Chicago Bears have been stout on run defense. They've also been great at running the ball against teams that don't know how to pass rush a quarterback. 49ers have not done that very well this season. One. Secondly, Caleb Williams is playing lights out. Yeah, Brock Purdy came back from injury, and we had Mac Jones in there, supplementary and all that good stuff as complimentary, and he's playing great ball. But they don't, besides Juwan Jennings and Kittle, they don't really have a lot of weapons. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey can get the ball out of the backfield, but I think that the Chicago Bears are coming into this game in two ways. First and foremost, time differential. Yeah, it could be an issue, could not. I don't know. They probably got there last night. Who knows? But this 49ers team, without consistent pressure on a quarterback and without being able to stop the run, what happens? You commit to the run or you commit to the sack. They commit to the sack, that opens those lanes. Why? Because linebackers are shifting and they're moving and they're not staying in the same place. So that opens the A gaps. And that's the offensive line's job, is to open the A gaps to make sure that those runners are able to go through it. They have a solid running game. And then you look at Christian McCaffrey, who's been an absolute beast all season long, consistent for the 49ers. This is going to come down to a 3-point swing. I think the Bears will pull it off. And Moody gets to go back to the team that let him go to begin with in the 49ers. So think about that one. Okay, glad we talked. This is Rudy Reyes with Alan Alford here at DiamondsCasinoReno.com, sponsored by Diamonds Casino. Uh, if you're in the area, come down. If you're not snowboarding, you should be. Matter of fact, I don't know if my snowboard's ready to go or not. I haven't called me yet. So we'll see. We'll see. It's a long way to go to Tahoe, even Truckee for that matter. Last game, but not least, the Seahawks. Seahawks. Home of the 12th man. Home of a team that certainly finds a way to win every single time they have the ball. And at home, despite Sam Darnold being sacked multiple times, still finding ways to win with the team and the guys around him. It's been consistent. Yeah, Sam Darnold threw an interception. Yeah, it happens. 2 interceptions. 3 interceptions. Nah, good. Thinking about benching. Didn't happen. Sam Darnold went out there. McDonald, possibly coach of the year. I think he's got a strong case because of what he's done with the Seattle team that Pete Carroll was not able to actually do during his tenure there. Former USC head coach, many years removed from there, but still not able to get that team there. They had to rebuild a lot of components, but man, getting Sam Darnold was the best. He could have signed anywhere. Any team would have been more than happy to have Sam Darnold, guaranteed, even the Steelers. But he fits there very well in Seattle. Interviewed Sam Darnold before he ever left college at USC. Fight on, by the way, Sam, if you're listening and watching the show. I think the Seahawks are very steady, consistent 12-3. Very consistent. They've showed consistency, the level of consistency, and they've done it at every single level. Now, with that being said, we just talked about Bryce Young. We just talked about the Carolina Panthers. There's possible mayhem brewing within the division to see who is going to hold that first round bye heading into the playoffs. I see the Seahawks getting this win against a Bryce Young-led Panthers team because you have to know how to lose in order to know how to win. And Bryce Young has been on the losing end many times in his career so far, in his early career, I should say. And I think this will be another L in the column for them, but a lot to learn from, a lot to grow from. Who are you taking in this game and why?
Yeah, this is where I think the Bucks get a little bit of help. I definitely think the Seahawks go ahead and close out the show and they beat the Panthers. I just think that the Seahawks are a bit too much for the Panthers at this particular time. I definitely do think they're going to put up a good fight, the Panthers, but ultimately I definitely think Sam Darnold and the Seahawks go away with the win, and I think that's going to indirectly create an opportunity for the Bucks. But I definitely, if I'm the Bucks, I'm winning the last 2 games regardless. But I definitely do think that the Seahawks will handle the business. That's a tough team to beat. They're playing well. Your record doesn't lie. 12-3 is 12-3 in the NFL. They're playing great. You have the 12th man. And I agree with you. That play for Pete Carroll, I'm going to bring that up, is the worst call in Super Bowl history right there. Not handing the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, having, I'm going to go with the theory that they wanted to give Russell the MVP because if Marshawn Lynch scores that touchdown, he absolutely, even if he doesn't, I'm just here so I don't get fined. If he said that 2,000 times, it doesn't matter. He is the deserving MVP if he scores that touchdown. He was having a baller game before that. It's a slam dunk if he scores a touchdown. I think they wanted to give Russell the MVP over Marshawn, and that's what cost him the game. That was the worst catastrophe, the worst call in Super Bowl history to this day. Yes, that was. You should have just handed off to Marshawn Lynch with 2 timeouts. There's no other explanation other than that. I know they didn't say it publicly, but I've thought about this. I watched some of the interviews afterwards. That's the only conclusion that makes somewhat sense. But yes, they win against the Carolina Panthers.
Yep, I definitely agree with you. We have about 10 minutes left here, brought to you by DiamondsCasinoReno.com. Go visit. And matter of fact, I'm sending out mailers to those. It'll be a hashtag Rude Comp for yours truly. And so that'll be sent out on social as well. So become a player, you get the Rude Comp, and you get some free play. So, you got to love it. Let's move on here. We have about 10 more minutes here left on the show. I wanted to touch on the NBA on Christmas Day, which is fabulous. If you didn't already have enough going on Christmas Day, now there's a barrage of games going all day long, and of course competing with the NFL as you would expect every single year in and year out. But we know NFL is king, but the NBA is a strong number two, not to be considered the runner-up, but still a strong number two. And are you not entertained? Come on now, are you not entertained? It continues all night long. Matter of fact, the last game will happen tonight. We'll talk about that in a minute. When you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers who are in play right now, I think that game is probably in the third or the second period, rather. Watching the Cavaliers take on the recently crowned NBA champion, NBA Cup champion New York Knicks. I'm not giving them the crown yet, but the Cup champion, yes, they are. I like this matchup. Cleveland was actually leading this game last I knew. And then you get a game between the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then the Houston Rockets battling the LA Lakers, who have lost 4 out of 5 games, which is pathetic. The festivities wrap up around 10:30 p.m. Eastern time between the Minnesota Timberwolves and Denver Nuggets, and to all a good night at that point. Let's break down the Cavaliers and how it arrived, how they arrived at this point. Currently, this team is 17-14. Midway in the Eastern Conference, they look good. They're only 7.5 games back from the conference, leading their Orlando Magic, which is kind of in your neck of the woods, but not really. But don't fear, it's a very young season, ladies and gentlemen, so don't get your panties in a bunch here. And I say that because this is a young season. There's so much more ball to be played, so you can't be too concerned about where these teams are going right now. It's the long term that we have to look at, not the short term for an NBA game. And the Cavs have been on a 2-game winning streak in hopes to be able to take down these Knickerbockers who are 20-9, who are actually on a roll and second in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks are faring well after winning the Cup and 3.5 games back behind the Pistons, who are playing very well at 24-6. And right now they're firing well on all pistons at this juncture and all cylinders. But anything can happen. Still a young season. But the game tonight between the San Antonio Spurs, who are 22-7, by the way, and the defending NBA champion Oklahoma City Thunder, could be a Western Conference champion preview. And I say that with complete honesty in mind, and I'm going to explain why. Both teams are poised to make a serious run. The Spurs are boasting a 27 record and only trail the Thunder with a record of 26-4, which is only 3.5 games out of Western Conference standings, right? So the Spurs have super shot blocker Victor Wembanyama, or known as Wemby, who's done absolutely fabulous things so far. And as a matter of fact, he leads the teams in rebounds, assists, and field goals, not to mention the NBA overall in blocks. When you look at the San Antonio Spurs team, and they're really spurring at the right time, is this a Western Conference championship preview between the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are trying to repeat this season?
Oh, it definitely is. The Oklahoma is a juggernaut of a team, and I definitely do think they want to get another ring. They're giving it all. This is going to be a preview. I think the Spurs are hanging in there, hanging tough, but I definitely do think OKC and their fan base is just a hard place to play in there and win. They have a very supportive, very good supportive gas, but I think their fans can't take things for granted. You have to go out there as if they don't have any wins. SGA is playing fantastic, and yes, they have experience, so they're going to be definitely the team to beat. I definitely do think that they did the right thing by not putting too much into having that record of the most wins. The main thing is how you do in a postseason, and if you win the championship, that's the main thing.
Right. Well, it's how you play down the stretch. Now, when we look at Wembanyama explicitly, he's the first player with 100-plus points, 15 blocks in the first 3 games of the season. That's pretty good company, considering guys like Patrick Ewing and Dikembe Mutombo, as you know, is one of the blocking champions in the in the NBA. Think about that one. Shea, or SGA, known as Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, is leading the way with J-Dub, or Chet Holmgren. Jalen Williams is known as J-Dub, Look, this game is going to have some of the best action out of all the games tonight, in my opinion. Why? Because there's a lot on the line. First, you're playing on Christmas Day, so that's extra money. If you win, yeah, it's a standard paycheck, call it a day. But you do get bragging rights, especially as the season goes on, when you talk about team breakers, when you look at seeding, when you look at where you're at in the conference, it's going to come down to seeding and who has the best schedule and who's able to overcome these injuries and issues and problems. And, we talked about Miami last week in regards to a gambling problem. Let's hope that stuff subsides. We can get on to actually enjoying the game of basketball. Let's just call that what it is. So these guys are doing great things. I'm looking very forward to this matchup, to say the very least. And don't forget, the Dallas Mavericks are facing the Golden State Warriors today. The Houston Rockets are battling the 4 out of 5 losing Los Angeles Lakers. And then the festivities wrap up tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern as the Minnesota Timberwolves clash with the Denver Nuggets, who are actually playing extremely well right now. And it looks like we lost Allen. But with that being said, for me and Alan Alford, thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas to you. Alan, I wish you the best and a Happy New Year as well if we don't talk before then.
Absolutely. Same to you. Happy New Year, and definitely Merry Christmas to everybody out there. It's always outstanding on Let's Talk Sports with you, Rudy. Definitely props to everybody at Diamonds Casino. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at the next show. We're going to start it off right in 2026.
It's going to be good in 2026, and this is where the rubber meets the road. With that, thanks, Alan. Appreciate you. Everybody, have a Merry, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we'll talk to you sooner than later on Let's Talk Sports here at Diamonds Casino.
Take it easy. Take care of yourself. Always a pleasure.